the production planning cost, the production cost, the distribution and the resource cost, and the product support cost. If you look at all these cost inputs that are coming for the product cost structure, there are two elements we need to look at: the sources of the information and the type of costs that we would be beset when we are looking at the product cost evaluation. Typically, most of these product costs, as you can see in the gray area, if it is transactional, it comes from the ERP. If it is a resource cost, it comes from the project management part of it. If it is the workflow, and if it relates to design, and if it relates to the activities across the organization, it comes from the product data management because of the weight states that are involved. PDM plus ERP contribute to the green squares which are shown over there. PDM and project management comes from the resource cost as well as the rest of it, while PDM, PM and ERP, which comprise together, form the PLM, look at the costs of the entire thing in terms of the resources, in terms of the data management part of it, as well as in terms of the ERP part of it. Now, if you look at the four different cost drivers, you are looking at the quality cost, the failure cost, the cost of risk, and the function cost as four functionals that come and contribute towards the product costing. There are two aspects of product costing that we always look at. The material cost, the production cost is one aspect of it, which is nothing but the cost of precision. And the second one is the cost of poor quality, which companies rarely look at. There are companies which have cost engineering managers and teams which keep looking at the cost from a functional engineering point of view in organizations. Remember, the cost of a product is dynamic, it is not static. Now, when we look at the design process overview in alignment with the cost, there are two objectives that we need to look at: the quality and the reliability. The quality and the reliability objectives, which are derived from the statement of requirement, can be classified into the assembly objectives and the performance objectives. Both are driven by the design failure modes and effects analysis, and the RPN numbers of the design failure modes and effects analysis would help you to look at and prioritize your quality and reliability objectives and put them on your drawings. The assembly objectives drive your design for assembly, which drive your datum reference frames and the part allocation of tolerances. And then you would be looking at the tolerance analysis and the tolerance optimization, which comes from the cost of poor quality and the cost of precision. The design for manufacture, which comes from your CP/CPK of your process, and the risk priority number from your DFMEA. These are the three constraints that would drive the tolerance optimization part of it. Next comes, as a result of that, you would be in a position to come up with the key characteristics that would be put on the drawing. Needless to say, the performance objective and the design for life, which translates into warranty, is the cost of poor quality or the cost of poor reliability that comes on the drawing as well, driving it indirectly. So the design for performance, the design for transportation and packaging, the design for service come as direct contributors to the product cost. Now, if you need to keep the costs under control, there are two different opportunities that help us to come and implement the cost reduction as a part of our design process. Upfront, early in design, when the requirements phase is there, when the conceptual development phase is there, and the product architecture is being put together, the cost reduction opportunities are pretty high, while the cost of implementing a change are pretty low. However, as you sign off into a detail engineering design, followed by testing and refinement of the product with regard to the prototypes, and then transitioning it into production, and then going with mainstream production, the cost reduction opportunities come down, while the cost of implementing a change goes up. So in other words, upfront engineering or simultaneous engineering or concurrent engineering driven by costs as the first functional paradigm would help you to achieve the objectives faster and easier as compared to later on in the product design and development stage. Now, the second thing is we keep giving tolerances on the drawing, and manufacturing looks at it as seen on the left side. In other words, manufacturing assumes that the cost of variation that comes as a result of provision of tolerances on the drawing is non-existent as long as you are sitting within the specification limits. This could be far from truth. As long as you are sitting closer to the nominal dimension, the cost of variation is less. As you move away from the nominal towards the specification limits as specified by M and M minus or plus or minus T, you would see the right hand side, which is the quadratic variation as professed by Taguchi's loss function deployment, would see that the cost of variation keeps on adding to the cost. If manufacturing is able to contain this and keep it towards the nominal as the Japanese have achieved, then the cost of variation is kept under control and the overall cost of quality and reliability is under check. Second, the third point is the system reliability, which also influences the cost. The system reliability, if you design each and every part for a reliability of, let us say, 0.99, but if the number of components going into the assembly keeps on increasing, the system reliability, here shown in for a series system which is typically used in the marketplace, keeps on getting reduced as you move towards the right of the x-axis, primarily with the increase in the number of components, primarily because the system reliability suffers due to assembly issues. However, with fewer components coming in and the number of components coming in keeping under check as designed for assembly, your reliability is protected. This is another significant cost influences that the end product cost. So let us look at the design for cost by an example, what we have seen as the fundamentals as the cost drivers. We are taking the case of a pressure relief valve as shown over here, which comprises of a few components. We will be enumerating these components shortly. It is being used in the outdoor environment in high temperatures and high vibrations, where the pressure pulsations are pretty large. Now, when we are looking at this particular component, marketing has come and given a target cost of 7,200 rupees. As shown in this picture, which is a CAD model of this unit, you would be able to see the components which are going into the assembly. The components are the valve body, which orients or locates the rest of the components and sub-assemblies in place, followed by the valve member, as shown in the blue condition, as the component keeps going, getting highlighted one after the other. And then you have the adjusting screw on the right hand side for the pulsating pressure, followed by the sealed adapter which houses a seal, followed by the washer which comes between the body and the fastener, and then you have the seal which goes in between on the left hand side, which is primarily for the screw adjustment of the manual adjustment. And then we have shown you in the wireframe mode for you to understand in the bounding box where the other seal is sitting, it is hidden inside. And then you have the control rod, and then you have the washer on the other side, followed by the adapter, the control screw, the control knob, which is typically a component which is bought from outside and it needs to be ultraviolet stable, otherwise it would end up breaking because it is in the atmospheric condition with the sun prevailing all over the place. And then you have the hexagonal nut on the right side, and then you have the spring, which takes care of the pressure characteristics, the relief valve part of it. So this gives you an overview of the construction of the pressure relief valve. And we are looking at how these components are going to be sourced or whether they are going to be built in-house. The decision is to evaluate the cost. As shown on the left-hand side, the body is going to be manufactured in-house. The valve member is going to be manufactured in-house. The control rod and the control screw, which are vital characteristics determining the pressure characteristics of the system, are going to be in-house. The barred out component on the right side are the adjusting screw, the seal adapter, the two washers which are common, the seals which are common, and the spring which is a barred out component, the adapter, the hexagonal nut, and the control knob. These are the components which are barred out. This is what we have decided. Now, when we look at the body, you could have done it using a casting approach, or you could have done it using a machining approach. If it is a casting approach, you would go through with the casting with the supplementary machining, and you would be going through with the machining of the complete component by itself. Whichever way it is, the design for manufacture comes into picture, and the process capability also comes into picture in terms of the maintenance of the tolerances and the cost of precision, which is going to be a summary factor in deciding the product cost explicitly. So when we look at it from a design for cost, you can see on the right side, after going through a lot of different design iterations, you would be able to see that the baseline cost has come down from 3,955 to 3,455, around 500 rupees reduction in cost because of a lot of different iterations that I've gone through. And on the right side, you will see the cost of each and every operation, whether it's a permanent mold casting or otherwise, and the different machining operations coming in together. You can itemize these costs. These costs can be taken and driven by a template either from ERP or from your local systems using your CAD software as well. Now, the same option is going to be done with the machining option, where the entire unit is taken, and the estimated cost, as you can see, is lower for this machined component as compared to the other one, primarily because of the tooling costs and the other costs involved in the other option. This could keep changing depending on the business dynamics of the system. Here again, the split up cost can be brought in, and the process control or the process routing can take place as a result of this analysis. Needless to say, your design review is going to be done with the people from the process routing and the manufacturing people, the assembly people, as well as with the suppliers before you sign off on the drawings. So cost is an intrinsic part. If you are able to see this cost a priori, then you can give a cost target to your purchasing department so that your costs can be kept under control. Now, this is another component. As you can see, the valve member is going to be machined, and different features with the least number of features coming into the picture, you would be able to see the cost iterations are driving the benefits for your product. So each and every one of these components, you can go through the cost, driving the components cost of precision and cost of poor quality upfront as a part of your design process. Next, if you look at the barred out components, or you look at, for example, the spring, which is going to be used in the system, you could have a high strength spring steel material, or you could have a plain carbon steel. Necessarily, one would have 1,000,000 cycles as a duty cycle, the other one would be 175,000 cycles as given by your design validation in your finite element approach. So you can see from a cost point of view, though the cost of the high spring steel is higher by more than 2 times, If you look at the characteristics of the pressure relief valve in terms of the pressure itself, you would see that because of the malleability of the steel that is being used in your wire drawing process, the turn radius changes, the size of the wire used changes, the coil turns need to be changed for reaching the same stiffness characteristics and the response time. And you would see that closer to the 0 or the 10 bar pressure line, you would see how the pulsation is negatively influenced on the right side for the cheaper cost as compared to the one on the left side. So in other words, the performance could suffer primarily as a result of a cost-driven decision from a supplier cost point of view, which normally is what we do when we go through these kinds of purchase decisions. However, if you look at the duty cycle, you would see if the warranty that is given over here is, let us say, for 2 years, and 2 years translates to 1 million cycles, let us say, you would not need to replace the component. In the case of the high strength spring steel, why you would be able to you would be replacing it more than 6 times over. In other words, the service cost goes up. Now, these are performance-driven initiatives that we need to do at the design stage to ensure that the cost-driven decisions are balanced while addressing the quality and the reliability. Cost comes secondary to quality and reliability. Quality is perceived, reliability is experienced. Now, if you look at the washer, one of the important things about cost or the value of a product is the IPR. As I said earlier, if the environmental condition is going to be hot and it's going to be in a vibration situation, the preload that is coming on the system has to be assured, cannot be mitigated. And if you look at the spring steel, it would have a coefficient of thermal expansion. If you would use copper, it would have a different coefficient of expansion, leading to a holding torque which is higher for copper as compared to the spring steel. Now here again, the cost of the spring steel washer is cheaper, the cost of the copper washer is higher. However, if you look at the influences on the relief valve characteristics at high temperature, and if you look at the cost of frequent recalibration and maintenance, which is nothing but the service cost, you would see that the 28 rupees is nothing as compared to the Baiter, which is the 16 rupees. Again, quality and reliability drive down the product overall cost as compared to the tip of the iceberg that we typically see in terms of the payout in the beginning when we purchase these components. Then we put together the tolerances on the drawing, and the tolerances on the drawing are based on the process capability, which is nothing but the cost of precision. Cost of inspection comes there as well. And then we start looking at the tolerance stack-up calculations to look at what is going to be the yield of this particular system. If you see the CP/CPK of this particular system, it is not even 1.33 because we have decided to keep some of the components in-house where we are dictating certain process capability. We are sourcing some of these components from our suppliers who may not or may have a process capability which requires you to have at least a 1.33 sigma. As a result of which the yield of the line needs to be factored in a priori, that is in the beginning itself. And you need to understand what are the sensitivity parameters that are going to influence the cost of poor quality. So bringing all this together, if you are able to put this together on your system and you come up with the total assembly cost, you see that after a lot of different iterations, you seem to have started with around 7,900, which was higher than the target cost of 7,200. and you have ended up with 6900, a little over that, as a result of your iterations at the design stage, and you know exactly what the contributors are, what the significant influencers are, what the cost of precision is, what are the cost of poor quality, and you would be in a position to come up with the distribution of each and every one of them and assure yourself that you have done the right thing with regard to the cost of the product. Now, coming back to the same design process overview, if you look at it, the assembly process, if the components are all going to be brought in and the sequence of assembly is going to be done inside and the fixturing is going to be done inside in-house, then all those costs have been taken into consideration. The datums and their sequence will help you in the setup time, which again is a cost influencer. The tolerance analysis helps you to find a fine balance between the cost of precision and the cost of poor quality, and you are optimizing the tolerances on the drawing, and then you are putting the key characteristics on the drawing and sending it for quality to keep a tab on repeatedly. Now, the risk priority number prioritizes your tolerance optimization. You have brought it in. This also is in compliance with your ISO 9000, which mandates you to give you measurable processes, repeatable processes in your new version of your ISO 9000 and your IATF, so that even that is assured. Now, the performance objectives and the design for life, which is nothing but warranty, is also assured. Your serviceability costs also comes down and is kept under control. Your transportation cost with regard to the fine balance between whether you're going to take it from your supplier or you're going to do it in-house is again taken into consideration. Putting all these together for a simple component which looks like very simple for a pressure relief valve, you would be in a position to tell your marketing and sales department as to where the finality of the costs lie and how they can maximize on the profitability on a superior product. Now, the design for cost is a paradigm shift that we need to enable as a part of our design process, because as we have seen, cheaper material cost does not mean reduced cost. Process capability is key to lowering the cost of poor quality. Warranty costs adds to the cost of poor reliability. Simplified part designs do not lead to lower product cost. Simplified assemblies do. Why would we say that? If we look at the system reliability graph with fewer components, the system reliability is higher as compared to the system reliability which falls apart as the number of components go up. The system reliability is dependent on the part reliability and the number of parts forming the system. Quality and reliability influence the product cost more than the material and the manufacturing cost. In summary, you would see that the design for cost is really not an option. It is a necessity. The opportunity cost influences the product profitability. When I say the opportunity cost, it is the time to market. You take a product to market faster, but it is beset with quality and reliability issues. The product image and the company image suffers, not to speak of the product profitability. So the opportunity cost is lost there as well. So compressing the design cycle time while incorporating all these measures to protect the profitability of the organization, you have your accuracy and your precision both being met. You have your opportunity cost as well in control. In a unipolar world of buyer domination that drives quality and reliability goals at offered cost, design for cost could not have come a day sooner. The product cost of ownership is the profit driver. The product cost analysis model as given over here is necessarily a dynamic model and not a static model. In other words, if you take the cost today and you take the cost a month later, it would be different because of the cost drivers, internal and external, coming in from the environment or the business environment. So that summarizes the presentation on how to determine the product cost, how costly your product can be, in terms of either cost of precision, which typically we look at the top of the iceberg, or the bottom of the iceberg, which is 10/11 as compared to 1/11, which is sitting on the top for an iceberg, right? The 10/11 is nothing but your cost of poor quality and cost of poor reliability. With that, we keep the floor on for any questions that you may have. Kindly send it by chat because the audience voices are muted. We would be happy to answer your questions with regard to this webinar. There is one question with regard to the material cost being taken from ERP. Yes, material cost needs to be taken from ERP and needs to be put in as a part of your system, primarily because at the design stage, it's a dynamic costing which is happening. There is a presentation on YouTube which everyone can view from Rockwell International, wherein on their SAP ERP system, they have 7 cost engineering people sitting together, putting the cost on a daily basis across their 21 factories around the world. So in other words, the dynamic costing is something which is important from a point of view of enabling the cost decisions at either the design stage in a new product development or subsequently down the line. One of the persons has asked him to make a presenter. I am unable to do that. Is it possible for you to send the question by chat, please? On the chat window, you can send the question. Thank you. How important is the grade of the material when it comes to the product warranty? See, one of the most important things about product warranty is the fatigue calculations that come in. And fatigue calculations typically are based on the endurance limit of the material that is influenced by the grade of the material. So in other words, if a person is able to take the warranty cost driven directly from your fatigue calculations, you would be in a position to estimate the bare minimum warranty that the product would be guaranteed for, so that the cost of reliability can be avoided. So yes, it is a part of the reliability process, wherein the finite element analysis followed by a fatigue calculations would help you to determine the failure modes and their risk priority numbers with regard to the required warranty versus the cost targets. If there are any other questions, we would be glad to answer. Whether the hardening cost will also be considered. Yes, when you take any particular product and you are going through a heat treatment process, whether it is a skin hardening or a through hardening using induction furnaces or any other method, the hardening process is a part of the costing process that I had enumerated earlier. And if it is done at the in-house condition, it could be a lower material handling cost. If it has to go to your supplier and then be brought in, then the transportation cost also would be involved over there. Yes, that is a part of the product costing that comes in. Yes, it is there in this case of the valve plunger that we have shown you in this presentation as well. And you can even have nitriding or any other option. You can customize it in your template and you can use it so that according to your business processes, so that you would be able to come up with the cost drivers according to the layout of the manufacturing process that you are going to be planning or you already have in your organization. Thank you for that question. The cost of design, is it influenced by lower quantities or volume? See, the cost amortization is based on an initial estimate cost. necessarily the prototype cost would be higher as compared to a mass production or a volume production. So you can say this is a unitary cost at the prototype development stage, and then you can amortize it. Both functionals are available in typical CAD systems, as we have seen in this particular presentation, so that based on the volume you will be able to do it. Additionally, if the same component is going to be standardized across multiple parts, multiple product families, the overall product cost comes down as well. So in other words, though you carry the risk of the same component standardized across multiple assemblies, leading to issues across multiple assemblies in the event there is a problem with that component, standardization of components typically helps us to reduce the per piece cost, driving the overall cost downward. Thank you for that question. And that also influences your yield from the line. Warranty cost is considered as a part of this. Yes, sir. Warranty cost is considered because warranty cost comes in depending on the statement of requirement, primarily because if you say that I have not done any design validation, I am estimating this according to my test conditions. In the test conditions, you would not be able to do all the design of experiments. However, on a digital validation approach, you would be able to do it. So what happens is you have an upper threshold of a good life and a lower threshold of a bad life. If the minimum bad life expectancy from the system, considering all the lower threshold aspects of the product functionals, are put in together and still it is assuring the minimum life then required by the statement of requirement, then the warranty cost is really not there. However, if the warranty cost is going to be there for the consumables, then that you are guaranteed to supply as a part of your supply order, then necessarily you can factor it as a part of this process. Yes. Can we define uniformity of all parts reliability in an assembly? See, the reliability is a probabilistic approach. The reliability, if you look at it, it is defined as the probability that a system would meet its specification requirements, including the performance of the product in the field during the life of the product. The word life is determined by warranty. So now what happens is you may have uniform warranty. If the distribution of the cost is pretty much uniform, then the reliability stakes are not that high. However, if the reliability stakes are pretty high on certain components which are influenced by the risk priority number on your DFMEA, as well as by the critical to quality characteristics that you are putting as cases on your drawings, then obviously the reliability would not be uniform. Then in those cases, you would have to factor a higher reliability, which comes with a cost penalty. You are taking it as a conscious decision as compared to the ones with a lower reliability issue because of the non-criticality of those in terms of the fit, form, and functional requirements. How inventory cost could affect the cost saving of a product? Could this be included in cost calculations? The inventory cost, as I showed you earlier, comes from your ERP. Yes, it is built in to the cost based on the volume and based on the just-in-time that you require, and you can put it as a part of the system, and it can be template driven, and it can be fed in through your tables from your ERP and made dynamic. How inventory could this be as well as, yes, it is as well as the reliability, as I had answered earlier. Next one is cost of parts changes from location to location. How can we handle that? That is called as the transportation cost that I had brought in by segregating as in-house development as well as supplier development. In a lot of cases, your end customer could be at a particular location while you could have multiple sites for manufacturing as compared to the ones, or it could be like your supply, you are having different supply locations. It is similar to that. That cost is factored in as a part of this process. Yes. Are there any other questions, sir, gentlemen and ladies? If there are no further questions, we appreciate your time and effort taken for going through this webinar. We hope you found it useful. This is important for every design engineer or engineering team to work out the design for cost a priori so that you can have your products becoming successful in the marketplace. Very best wishes for your products. We will be sending you a hyperlink for the presentation in the event you require it, as has been requested by some people. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.